This is a podcast about our lived experience, which unfortunately includes infant death and subsequent mental health struggles. Please take good care of yourself and only listen if this content feels safe for you right now. We'll still be here when you're ready.
Hi, I'm Judith.
And I'm Alina. We both lost babies to SIDS in winter 2021.
In the throes of grief, I reached out to a stranger on the internet and our friendship was born.
In the years since, we've been working hard to survive, rebuild, and navigate the continual challenges that have come our way, including divorce,
Job loss,
dating while bereaved,
moving multiple times,
health scares,
pregnancy and parenting a living child,
starting new jobs, and so much more.
We are tired.
Happily ever after is out of the question for us, but this podcast documents our journeys to happier ever after because we believe life after loss is worth living.
So join us as we laugh, cry until we laugh.
Welcome to As Long as I'm Living podcast.
We're so glad you're here.
Hi.
Hi.
How long do you have? I don't want to stress you out with work.
Oh, no, it's okay. I have a meeting, but it feels optional.
Okay. We can keep it short. I need to talk through IVF and everything that's going on. It's very stressful.
Yeah, I know it's stressful. Well, let's talk through it.
So here's the sitch, listeners. So I'll back up and I'll try to give a super brief overview of the situation, which is that I found out August 31st of last year that Quinn's death was potentially related to a gene he inherited from me. And so since that time, since November of 2022, I've been pursuing IVF for genetic reasons. It's been a long work in progress. They have to develop this genetic probe. There was a delay with that. There was a delay with something else. Delay. And then in June of this year, June of 2023, early June, like the 1st, they said, okay, your test is ready. You can start the cycle anytime. So I was like, okay, great. I'm going to start right after my wedding, which is July 15th. So we made an appointment to start July 24th. And I have been working the last couple of weeks to get like all my prior authorizations in for everything and blah, blah, blah. Everything was going fairly smoothly. We were ordering the drugs, blah, 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 blah. And then, oh my God, this is my doctor. I'm so sorry. Hello?
Blood work only.
Okay, sounds great. I will see you then. Well, not you, but I'll see someone then. Okay, thank you so much.
Good.
Okay,
You're
bye-bye.
Welcome. Bye-bye.
So I'm starting IVF tomorrow.
I thought you were starting today.
So I'm starting tomorrow because I want to avoid the possibility of having the retrieval on the wedding day.
Oh, okay.
For obvious reasons.
I think that's a good idea. So why don't we just give an update? Because I feel like this is all new information.
Yeah, this is all new information. So as of a week ago, everything was all set for me to start my IVF cycle July 24th. But then I found out one day later on June 30th that my insurance is changing, that work is changing my insurance on August 1st in the middle of my planned IVF cycle. And that one of the providers on my care team, the lab that did the genetic test, the whole reason I'm doing this so that I don't have another dead kid, is not in network with my new providers.
Well, actually, the real challenge is that your genetic test.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
That's the real problem.
You're right. So let me back up even further, which is that I got this genetic test done. It finished on June 1st. And then like a week later, they notified me that the lab that did the test is sunsetting the particular style of test that I spent 12 weeks making. Well, longer than that, but like actually 12 weeks making, and that it expired on August 31st. Now, I called, I complained, and they extended the deadline to October 31st. So essentially, I only have until October 31st to use this test that I've paid money for and that my insurance has paid money for to test embryos. So I have to try to get as many embryos as I can before October 31st of this year. So we were planning to do a cycle as soon as humanly possible after my wedding. So that was the July 24th date. Then I just found out that my work is changing insurance.
Well, the goal was, hold on, I think you're missing pieces. The goal was to do it in July
because you wanted to try and squeeze in 2 IVF cycles between now and October 31st when the genetic testing expires. And the reason you want 2 is because you don't know how many eggs you'll get. Yeah. And beyond that, you don't know how many will fertilize, and you don't know how many will have this genetic disease. But assuming you have, let's say, you got 11 eggs, and then let's say half of those make it to some sort of embryo, that's 5.
And then half will have the gene.
Half of those will have it. So then that's 2. And so, and you want to do as many as you can now because your eggs are younger. And if you do get pregnant, you don't want to wait another year to do this. And also the thing expires. The genetic thing expires. Right. So with the assumption that you're going to need, let's say, at least 4 or 5 embryos to create the family that you envision.
Yeah, exactly.
You need to fit in 2 cycles.
Yes.
Between now and when the October 31st deadline.
Correct. Yeah. So that's a good point, Judith. This whole thing is so confusing. My brain is so full of shit with this that like, I can't even like string together a coherent storyline. So sorry, listeners, but thank you, Judith, for keeping me on track. The goal is to have 5 or 6 healthy embryos now while I'm 32 so that I have options to build my family the way I want to in my 30s.
And 5 or 6 embryo doesn't mean 5 or 6 pregnancies. 5
Correct.
Or 6
oh my God. No, do not want 5 or 6 kids.
5 or 6 embryos statistically, and like some person who's an expert in IVF will probably correct us, but like I think they say like every 3 or 4 embryos gives 1 live birth or something.
Yeah, I think it's like 2 to 3 for 1 live birth.
All right, so in theory, with 6 embryos, you could, in theory, have 2 children.
Right.
In theory.
So yeah, I definitely want 2 more kids, and I want to leave the option on the table for a 3rd kid, if that feels a 3rd living kid, if that feels right. And I don't want not having embryos to be the reason I can't have a 3rd kid. So I'm like trying to get enough embryos that like I can hopefully have options for building my family down the line.
And in theory, you could go through this like genetic probe building experience again in 4 years if you wanted to.
I totally could, but my eggs will be 4 years older, right? So like the best.
Well, there's actually like more complicated factors. First of all, your eggs will be 4 years older, but also like you've told me before that you want to take off time when you have kids, so you don't necessarily even want to be working. Right now, this is all covered by insurance through your work. Now it's possible your partner will have insurance that will cover this. We don't know, but you know that you have full coverage right now. And so it just kind of feels like too good to be true. Listen, I happen to know your financial circumstances, and if push comes to shove, you would find a way to pay for it. You know, It's not like you have to be covered by insurance, but right now, being that insurance will cover it, there's like this feeling of let's do it now when I'm younger, when I have the probe already created, the genetic probe, while insurance is covering everything, while it seems like let's try and get these embryos tested. And also, I think part of it is just like for data. We have no idea what percentage of your embryos will actually have this. It's totally possible that 0 more will have it, and it's possible that 100% will. Yeah. But I think part of it is like we just want to know. Like you've been living with this like, potentially life-threatening mutation over your head, and to just know that you have embryos that don't have this
embryos in the bank. Exactly.
Really reassuring.
And like, not for nothing, like I have wanted a baby since September of 2018. So to sit here in July of 2023 and not have a baby, like at least taking this, I want to just start the motherfucking process, you know? Like, let's get my ass in gear and like do step 1. Granted, this is like step, 77, right? Like I also had a whole pregnancy and baby in the interim, but he died. Spoiler, he's dead. Hence this podcast. I just want to do something, and it feels good to be able to do something right now, even if that something is not, to be clear, this is not the embryo transfer part of this process that would make me pregnant. Like that is still a conversation between my husband and myself. Like we're working on what that timing is going to be. It's not now. The timing is not now for that. But the retrieval part I can do right now. And there's a lot of very compelling reasons that we just talked about that hopefully made sense to you all to do it now. Insurance, the probe expiring, my age, etc. Okay.
I also, sorry, Alina, I don't think you realize like how confusing this would be for listeners.
Oh my God, Judith, I do understand how confusing it is because I'm confused.
No, I'm saying you're talking about your wedding and you're also calling your husband. So Alina eloped. So she is technically already married. So the reason she's saying my husband and then she's saying my wedding is in 2 weeks, but this is my husband, is because she's already married. It could be confusing because she never told anyone that.
That is very true. You're right. We do reveal that actually, Judith, in the second interview episode with Tyler, which is coming out.
When is this going on? I thought this was going on Monday.
No, this will come out on the 24th.
Oh, okay. Well,
Tyler part 1 on the 10th, Tyler part 2 on the 17th. This will come out on the 24th.
Okay, got it. Okay, I'm on it.
Yeah. So anyway, I thought everything was going smoothly. I mean, as smoothly as having a dead kid and having to do IVF for genetic reasons so the rest of my kids don't die can be. Yes. We were gonna start on July 24th, and then I found out on last Friday, 6 days ago, that my work is changing my insurance plan in the middle of my IVF cycle.
Yes.
So that sent me into a tailspin of phone calls to insurance companies, phone calls to doctors, blah, 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 blah. The new plan is to do an IVF cycle as soon as humanly possible so that I can get the whole thing done in the month of July before my insurance changes. So I have been on the phone for probably, this is not an exaggeration, 5 or 6 hours over the last week on hold, talking to different people, calling the wrong phone number, getting transferred, etc. With my doctors, with the insurance, with the fertility pharmacy, etc. Trying to get prior authorizations in for the drugs, getting the drugs shipped, trying to switch the drugs to the ones my insurance. I mean, just so much shit. A lot of it is just classic IVF stuff that you do every time, but this was all very rushed because I have this looming deadline of July 31st on my head. And the way my doctor explained it to me is that in order to complete the full cycle by July 31st, I have to start by July 10th at the latest because stims, the stimulating part of the IVF cycle, can last up to 14 days. So that would take us to July 24th. And then the embryos have to develop for up to 7 days. And then that point is where they're biopsied and sent to the lab that is not going to be in network as of August 1st. So I need at least 21 days, 14 days for stims, 7 days for embryo development. That last day is when they're going to do the testing. So I have until July 10th to start this cycle. So I've been trying to get the drugs in. And yesterday, midday, it became clear that I was not going to be able to get the drugs in time. And so I was grieving that for a couple of hours.
I'll say that there was part of it was like a roller coaster because
oh my God,
get the drugs in. I cannot get the drugs in. I can get the drugs in. I cannot. It's like they'll be here next week. The doctor forgot to press send. They'll be here in 2 weeks. They won't be here. It was like a lot of back and forth, and I could so relate to the experience you were going through because I know when your brain is so fixated on something, I know how your brain works because mine is very similar and just in terms of intense focus. Nothing in the entire world was going to deter you from determining when these drugs were coming.
And I would talk to you on the phone 5 different times throughout the day. And it would be I'm doing the cycle. And then it'd be no, I'm not doing the cycle. And then it's yes, I am doing the cycle. And then it's no, I'm not doing the cycle. Yes. And so finally yesterday, midday, it was very clear. There was no way I was going to get the drugs in time. I'm not doing the cycle. And you and I were talking and it was we were oh my God, I feel like the universe is telling me something. This is clearly not meant to be. It's not meant to be. That's how it felt. It really did because wow, had I done a lot of work and it just wasn't meant to be.
That's how it felt. Yeah.
Enter Jill.
Yeah.
You guys all know Jill, Hadley's mom. I will link her episode in the description. Jill is an IVF warrior. Hadley was conceived via IVF. She's done multiple rounds of IVF. She's a really good friend of mine that I met through Empty Arms. Also, shout out to Empty Arms. I will link them in the description. I was lamenting this situation to Jill, and Jill out of nowhere goes, I've got boxes of Menopur.
Yeah.
She's I have Gonal-F pens. And I was what?
Well, I don't even understand what she was doing with it. Why did she have it?
Well, because she did an egg retrieval cycle like 2 months ago.
But then she used it.
Well, yeah, but I think she's done so many. I mean, I don't exactly understand the ins and outs of this, but she's done enough cycles that it's like a thing where you like order stock of meds and then you have them. And then like that's very common in IVF circles, which I only know because first of all, Jill, second of all, following people on Instagram. And third of all, because my clinic kept saying like, do you have any of these drugs in stock? Do you have any of these drugs? I was like, no, I've never done this before. Like my clinic was asking me that. And I was like, I don't have any drugs in stock. Like this is my first cycle. So the end of this story, you guys, is that Jill is saving the day and she's giving me all the drugs I need for this cycle, and I'm doing it in July. And I feel like this all...
Alina's making a baby.
I'm making a baby. I'm making some embryos in July. Like right now, like as you guys are listening to this, I've already had my egg retrieval, assuming Ella went well. And it just, I feel like it took a while for it to hit me that this, all of this work and all of these calls and all of this administrative headache, like all came together, and I am going to have the drugs. My body is at the right point in my cycle. Like, and I'm going to do it. Like it's happening. It's happening. And then you and I, it was so funny. We had a conversation where we were like, the universe is telling us this isn't meant to be. And then 45 minutes later, we had a conversation. We were like, the universe was like, hold my beer.
100% this is meant to be. I really do feel like
But okay, so this is not, well, no, you say your thing first.
I was just going to say, I've been practicing the power of like allowing my anxieties to think positive outcomes. And I think this is like a really good example of my anxiety practicing positive outcomes.
But so it's not all good. So, I mean, it is all good. It's all good. It's all good things, but I'm having some complicated feelings about it. I think I've been so fixated, and Judith, you and I haven't even talked about this yet because this all happened last night, like after I went to bed. I've been so fixated on the logistics of getting this done. Insurance companies, talking to my HR, making phone calls, talking to my doctor, going for blood work, like doing all of these administrative tasks and fixated on getting it done and hoping I could do it and it would work. And now that it's all coming together, I was lying in bed last night and I was just crying. Like, I don't want to have to do IVF. Yeah. Like, this sucks, Judith. Like, it's not the drugs. It's not like injecting myself. Like, I'm not afraid of that part. Like, yeah, whatever. But like, this is just so unfair. Like I said earlier, like I've wanted a baby since September of 2018. And like, I'm no closer to having that baby. And I have to go through this whole fucking shitty process that is so unfair that I shouldn't have to do. And my kid is dead. And I have a dead child in the midst of all of this. And I'm going to have to be 7 days into stims at my wedding. So that should be a fun, bloaty, hormonal event. I am not allowed to drink or exercise, so I can't dance the way I would. I can dance, but I can't twist to prevent ovarian torsion.
You can't drink?
I can have one drink.
Oh.
Yeah. And the other like kind of funny thing about this is I've been like getting into a fitness routine, and I like went for a couple of really good runs earlier this week, and I signed up for a half marathon.
Which I thought was a dumb idea.
Well, yeah, but I was excited about it, and I signed up for a half marathon on a day where I thought this all wasn't going to happen, and then now it's happening, and so I can't run. I can't do high impact exercise. And like, believe me, like I am more happy than not that this is all working out, like so much more happy than not that it's all working out. But I feel like I haven't really given myself a chance to grieve that this is how I have to go about this, and that none of the timing is the way I would want it to be. Setting aside the timing of wanting a baby 5 years ago, like none of this, the timing of this IVF cycle is not good for my personal life. It's the best case scenario given the insurance and the medical factors in play, but it's not the way I want to do it. And like, I don't want to have to conceive all of my children on a calendar with IVF, but that is how I have to do it. And my husband and I are going to have to talk about like, when should I start doing drugs to try to get pregnant and do a transfer, as opposed to just like, let's take my IUD out and see what happens. Like we don't.
To be honest, though, I think that that's actually very normal.
Yeah.
Like, not the injectings and whatever, but I think a lot of people, like, when you tried to get pregnant the first time, it was not like, let's just take my IUD out and see what happens. It's your personality to want to, like, track and be accurate, and you're not just going to, like, we'll see. Yeah. I've never seen you will see anything. So.
I know, I don't will see things. I just think, like, for my husband's sake, like, he, by the way, is completely fine with all of this. And if you listen to last week's episode, we actually talk about, somebody asked us how Quinn dying and all of this stuff has affected conversations around fertility and parenting. And that was a really good question. So go back and listen to that episode if you haven't. I'll link it in the description. He's fine with all this. He's completely fine. It's just, it does feel like a loss.
It is a loss.
It's its own loss.
It is a loss.
And I felt really sad about it last night. Like, really sad about it. I think, like I said, I was just so fixated on getting it done that I don't think I had the opportunity to grieve all that I was giving up in order for it to be done now. And the truth is, it has to be done now. Like, given the opportunity to do it now, like, I'm going to do it now. But like, this is going to affect my experience of my wedding. This is going to affect my physical health. I've been getting in really good shape, and now I have 4 weeks of no exercise, and it just kind of sucks. And it's great. And I'm so excited to inject myself every day. And thank you, Jill. Guys, make yourself a friend who is an IVF queen.
Everybody needs an IVF queen in their life.
Yeah.
I think it's good.
It is good. It is good. I just needed to get those feelings out, I think.
They were big feelings.
Yeah, they really were.
Yeah. They were. And I think that they're all really valid, and I think that it would be unusual to not feel that way. And I am not going through IVF, but so much of what you said is relatable, because I don't want to do any, like, very little do I get what I want, you know?
Yeah. I feel like in our lives, it's like, I mean, we have a whole episode about consolation prize, right? Like, even the good stuff that we have in our life now, it's like, but I wouldn't actually choose this. If I were looking at my life as a whole, like, yes, this is the best case scenario in my current situation, but like, let's back up to 10 situations ago and change that one so I don't have to deal with any of this other shit, right?
Yeah. And I do believe, by the way, that one day we'll be old and gray and we'll look back and it'll all just kind of make sense, and we'll all feel like it wasn't that big of a deal. It was, it's just like a thing I did to get to the next thing. But right now it feels like it's consuming so much of my mind, and it's consuming so much of my world. Exactly. And it feels like it's really taken a shadow over everything. But one day I really do think we'll look back and be like, okay, the universe had its plan, and this is the way it had to be. Last night I was in therapy, and my therapist made a comment. She was like, wow, you're so different. Because she started working with me in the beginning. Well, it's Dr. Mendel. You guys all know Dr. Mendel. And
shout out to Dr. Mendel.
She was with Dr. Denise. Whatever, doesn't matter.
Grief with Dr. Denise, at Grief with Dr. Denise.
Yeah, exactly. But she said, like, wow, you've really changed. And I think we all have changed, and we needed to go through, like, we got through what we needed to get through to be this new version of ourselves. And I don't know if this version of Alina, I think that if you were going through IVF in the beginning trying to conceive Quinn, like, maybe it would feel and look different. Mm-hmm. But maybe one of the reasons why you're excited now is because you've been through so much and you have a new perspective, and like, maybe that's a gift in itself. Maybe.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Maybe it's a gift to be able to say, like, it's just IVF.
Yeah. I do feel like the feelings that I was feeling And even now, as I'm talking about it, they've already started to fade from last night. Like, I'm glad I let myself feel the grief around having to do this and let it move through me. And I'm starting to get more and more excited again.
Because it is sad.
Yeah, it is
sad, but I also think that you are in a place right now where you can see different perspectives, a couple steps out. Like, you're sad, but in a couple of, I have watched so many people go through IVF on TikTok, which is not real life. But in each one of these cases that I follow on TikTok, I got devoured by a mosquito last night. Each one of these cases that I've watched on TikTok, there were things like this. The authorizations didn't go through, or this didn't work out, or she ovulated too early or too late, or only one of her eggs had a mass and the other egg had and so she only got half as many eggs. And like, I feel like I've seen so many IVF stories now, which I don't know if it's healthy for my brain, but where it's like in the moment, it looks like what you're describing right now, because it feels like the end of the world. Like, so much loss, so much grief, and they're all pregnant now, all of them. Or they all had babies, or they're going through postpartum depression or some other adventure. But my point is just like, I feel like when you're in it, like, I feel like because I'm not in it, I have this perspective of like, but I just know it's all going to work out.
Yeah.
And when you're in it, it feels like, is it not? Everything seems so big. Every decision seems so big. Every decision feels like the end of the world. Every bad news feels like the exact end. Mm-hmm. But now, like, living life a little bit more, part of my new perspective after loss is like, this is one little hill in like a mountain range. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So can you hold on to that perspective while I'll be in the washing machine, and you can stand outside the washing machine. You can be like, the cycle's going to end. You're going to stop being thrown around in the washing machine. I promise you, I will switch you to the dryer soon.
I really think so. I don't know, because I'm talking to you on a day where like, I feel like I'm in a just calmer mental headspace. But I really do believe that like, when you've seen, like, okay, this is another thing I'm thinking about. A lot of my friends, we spoke this last night, are pregnant. A lot. Lost moms, not lost moms. So everyone I know is pregnant. And when Aiden died, it felt impossible. Like, it felt like, how could any of us have kids? Like, all I saw was death all around me. And now 2 years out, 2.5 years out, they're all having kids, like including you. And I feel like now I've seen the cycle play through so many times that I'm able to see, like, I feel with such conviction that you will have a baby. Like, I've seen so many people have children, extra children, like children that they weren't even planning they have now. They're all pregnant with, so many of them. And I feel like when you're in it, it's so hard to see that. But standing out of it as someone who's not going through that right now, it's like so clear, like, yeah, bad things happen, but then they all kind of move forward. My point is just that I think I've seen so many times this play out that I feel 100% convinced that you're going to have a baby. And like, it's just a matter of like getting through these details.
I posted something on Instagram last night. I reposted something on our stories that says, someday we'll look back on this time and wonder how we got through it. I have no idea how we'll do it. We just had to, so we did.
I think that's true. I think that's true.
Okay, we're recording.
This is going to be the worst audio ever, but that's okay.
That's okay. We're just doing a quick follow-up.
Okay, so what day past retrieval are we?
Let's see.
We're at the weekend.
We're at the weekend, yeah. So we're 5 days past retrieval. Is that right? Yeah, 5 days past retrieval. And it did not go great. I have 2 blastocysts at this point, and that's not bad. That's good. Some people don't get any blastocysts. I'm not going to try to minimize that as being the worst thing ever, but that is not what we were hoping for. It's a big bummer. As a matter of fact, it fucking sucks.
Not only is it not what we were hoping for, it actually kind of, you're not even allowed to test it for the gene.
Yeah, so something that I hadn't really even mentioned in the regular episode because it just seemed so unlikely to me that this would happen, but they need at least 4 embryos in order, 4 fertilized eggs in order to test. So even if the embryos had fertilized but then died, that would have been okay. But because only 2 eggs fertilized we can't even run the genetic test until I do another IVF cycle. So the last part of this episode that you guys heard was a big frantic rush getting this all done so that I could start the IVF cycle in July, and it affected my wedding for sure. I'm on
100%.
I'm on my honeymoon right now, and it's definitely affecting like my mood on this trip. And it was all for 2 blastocysts that I hope turn into my living children, but statistically they will not turn into my living children, and I can't even test them for the gene at this point. It was not a good outcome.
No, it wasn't a good outcome. And what I said to you this week is that I just don't think it's worth it, me saying you only need 1, and, you know, you learn so much about your body, and, you know, I've heard worse numbers and everything turns out fine and they just need to adjust your meds. Like, I just don't even think, I don't even think that's true. I think that's just bullshit. Like, let's just call it what it is, Alina. This is not good news. This is not a great outcome.
Yeah.
This is really disappointing. It's really sad that this affected your wedding day, because I just feel like there have been so many joy. Well, what you explained to me when I said, how did this affect your wedding day, is that in your mind, the retrieval, like the stims, like everything was together. Like, it was part of the joyous occasion. Like,
yes.
And you were making this baby. Like, it felt like everything was happening at once. And it definitely did affect your mood in terms of your hormonalness and the way you looked at your wedding. And I think that now, looking back, you told me that you feel sad, a little sadness, because you had hope at the wedding and that hope is gone.
Yeah.
Right? Did I get it right?
Yeah. And I mean, even to the point where, like, at the wedding, we had to go do IVF shots, and we did IVF shots in the bathroom at the wedding, and our photographer took pictures of that happening. And, like, I don't want to look at them, because that IVF cycle that we did at the wedding, like, doesn't feel like it had a good outcome. Like, yeah, okay, sure. If one of these 2 blastocysts, like, survives and they are PGT normal and they don't have the gene and I don't miscarry and they survive a pregnancy and they're born alive and they don't die of SIDS, like, maybe it'll feel worth it. But there's just, like, the numbers aren't there for me to feel like this was worth it at this point.
You know what else I'll say, Alina? This had not even entered our mind. At least for me. Like, this was not an option.
No,
like, I just never... This is, I mean, it wasn't because I was being so positive. I just thought Alina doesn't struggle with infertility issues. Yeah. She has perfectly normal infertility. The doctor seems like totally unconcerned with your eggs. And, like, everything just seemed so normal and smooth. And, that, you know, once you started, it all kind of just seemed like you got the exact numbers that the doctor had been predicting, and then, like, everything just seemed the whole time. I was like, oh, of course she'll get that. It didn't even enter my mind that the IVF, the challenge of the IVF was going to be getting the material.
I agree.
I thought it would be the testing, not the material.
Yeah, that's how I felt too. And I think there's a lot to unpack here that we can unpack in, like, a future episode. Like, I mean, so much to unpack here.
Yeah.
But at the very least, like, I'm going to wrap this episode up by saying, like, this did not go the way we were hoping. And it's definitely, like, it feels almost like a little, like, egg in my face, like, that I had so much hope about this when it just, like, did not pan out the way we thought, you know? And, like, I know this doesn't say anything about who I am as a person, but infertility... Like, I actually feel like my brain has, like, shifted immediately into an infertility mindset. And infertility is, like, really shitty and painful and shameful. It feels very shameful, even though it has nothing to do with me as a human being. And I think there's a lot to unpack here that I'm sure we will unpack on future episodes.
To all of our wonderful new friends, we want to hear from you. Email us at aslongasimlivingpodcast@gmail.com and follow us on Instagram at aslongasimlivingpodcast. We'll get back to you as soon as our grieving brains allow. Yay!